What's happening, everybody? Happy Wednesday night. For a minute, we had the Gremlins uh, taking control of the on-air podcast tonight, but we here. Happy Hump Day. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing the mic with a special guest. Our guest comes, to us as a speaker, an author, a podcast host who really delves into relationships, but from maybe a different perspective than most of us may identify with or address, or even some of us may not even know that this actually exists. But it's a very important topic for so many people across so many different communities and in our society. So I'm proud, to be here live tonight, with tonight's guest. And for those of you joining us, I see some of you in the weeds. Please go ahead and drop us a comment. Let us know where you're joining us from. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the other mic tonight's guest, the incredible Athra Bodhi. Athra, how are you doing this fine hump day?
You know what? I am doing great. It is around 8 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, so I think I'm on the other side of the hump. What about you?
Same here. Same here. And building up to this, I'm really excited, to have you on and talk about, your work and the many different hats that you really do wear. But in most conversations, you can't really start a conversation without starting at the beginning, right? So when I say start at the beginning, I have to ask, first of all, who is Athra Bodhi? And more specifically, though, what does she like to do when she's not writing a book or speaking at an event or working on her own show?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm going to be honest with you. First and foremost, I have to say that I am a child of God
Hmm.
who passionately loves her family.
Mm.
And I have the most incredible family, just like everybody does. I have a biological daughter and a
Yeah.
bonus daughter, a
Hmm.
biological son and a bonus son, and four bonus grandchildren. I
Hmm.
love to cook. I love to garden. And of course, I love to write.
Mm. Listen here, that right there is, it really encompasses so many things. Just like it seems like it encompasses who you are, and it just makes me want to start. Then really, I guess what it's kind of like a two-part question if I had to ask, because I want to start with your podcast, which focuses on unconventional
Mm-hmm.
domestic relationships, right? Through the 8515 support group. Now, I had to do some research to educate myself so that I can sit down and talk with you. But I want you to start there. Like, can you explain to our audience, one, about your podcast, and specifically what is the 8515 support group's meaning?
Okay, so the Athra Bodhi Show, conversations about unconventional and complex domestic relationships is just what it says. We're looking at unconventional and complex domestic relationships. Now, the 8515 support group, it is a group of ladies who come together to help our sisters stay together if they're so choosing in a marriage that's giving them pretty much 85 to, 85% of what they want, 15% of what they don't want.
Hmm.
And I put that in the book.
Hmm.
And as people read the book, they said, well, we think that you could help more people if you make this a podcast.
Okay. I-
So maybe I should have named the podcast the 8515 support group.
yeah, I mean, it's really complex. Just like I said, from reading it, and that 8515, right? When you talk to women, our sisters and other women, I have that because look, I'm a man, so I feel like I'm on the other side of the equation, or I'm playing a part in why that is the way that it is. But what have you found and I don't want to call it a complaint, but conversations
Mhm.
that had around that 85-15 that maybe are common, or some things that you even had to say, wow, I never really heard that, or seen that before, or experienced that before.
Well, most of the time, we're talking about that three-letter word, the
Ooh,
one that
okay.
begins with the S, ends with an X, and has an E in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, people are great people,
Right.
you know, and we come together because there's something about that person that makes us feel like we can do a marathon with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be long distance cross country runners. That's what we're looking at, right? We're gonna run cross country with them.
Right.
And sometimes that person we're running cross country with is not the person that's the sprinter,
Mm.
because when you're watching a track meet, the sprinter, it's quick action and it's fun and we like it. Cross
Right.
country, they're there for the distance. They're there
Mm.
for something different.
Right.
Well, a lot of times, what I have found in the conversations,
Mm-hmm.
found a couple of things. Number one, I'm not satisfied in the bedroom,
Mm.
men and women.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
Number two, after people get together,
Mm-hmm.
then they start discovering things about their spouse
Okay.
that
Okay.
they weren't thinking was going to happen. So I'm going to give you next week's podcast
Okay.
is about a woman who has been married less than a year,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband is being entertained uh, by porn where the people have had top surgery and not had bottom surgery, and there's that third
Oh.
leg.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
And a lot of times people don't want to talk about it.
True.
People don't want to even admit that that's a possibility in life.
Right.
So the guys who I consult with from time
Mm-hmm.
to time, they give us a perspective. And one thing I have learned from doing this work
Mm-hmm.
is that asexuality
Hmm.
is something that we never consider, but
So true.
is prevalent in a relationship sometimes.
Hmm.
I know, right? I learned.
Yeah.
You want to know what I learned, right?
Right. I asked because I mean it's mind blowing, because again though, like I said, we, just my opinion is, we live in a very surface society, right? Where
Mhm,
we have a lot of general norms for men and women.
mhm,
But then there are subsets of these norms that uh maybe a straight or hetero male or woman may not be totally in tune with or aware with. And then when they, like you said, you get together with someone that you get married to, and then these norms, which may not be your norms, you
mhm,
never knew anything about. And
mhm,
just hearing that conversation. So when you are dealing with people who are living, like you said, this asexuality and different type of norms through porn or whatever it may be, like
mhm.
how do you um then really sit down and really unpack that, not only for them but then to use that for your show, because that's got to be a difficult thing to do, I guess maybe initially when you first started out, because that probably may have been like you probably sat there and was like, wow, like whoa. But like how do you unpack that now and actually send a positive message and a helpful message to those who may not even know anything, like myself, really understand or even thought about that, week to week.
Well, I grew up in a family.
Mm-hmm.
everybody has people in their family who are, we call them black sheep for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But with my parents, they were always open to having conversations about whatever.
Right.
So we were aware that we had an uncle who was mostly homosexual and some other family members who were bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
And we had open conversations about it.
Hmm.
So that is one thing I think that helped prepare me for that.
Right.
The next thing I think helped prepare me for that was the fact that I have friends who are open about who they are.
Okay.
And we would have honest conversations growing up. So I have a friend, and it's so funny because we laughed, and he was like, you know, when I met you, I thought you were really beautiful and a very nice person. And that's why I started talking to you, but you didn't do anything for me.
Mm.
You know, like, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm glad I did it because
Right.
this is who you are. And you know, we've been friends for over 30 years now, but, you know, we still laugh about certain things. And he's one of my consultants to help me understand things that I may not necessarily understand. When my uncle was alive,
Got it.
when my aunt was alive, when my parents were alive, we had honest conversations about everything. Now, of course, you know, my parents were heterosexual. My aunt was heterosexual. My uncle was not, but my aunt had lived a long time in San Francisco.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so she had a lot of knowledge to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that people are willing to have open conversations
Right.
about whatever, because you'll see things on the news, and before all four of them transition, social media is out there. So now we're talking about what's going on in social media.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So that's what makes this a little easier.
So now with that gateway now through social media, it definitely does make certain topics easier. You can find more information and shareable information that you can talk about. But as I listened though, so all of this is great, but where or what was it that inspired you then to really want to delve more in? Was it your, your exposure, like you say, family conversation, different things? Because this is not, we're going to just be honest, not your normal type of conversation that most people that, like I said, if we go societal, have these type of conversation about. So what inspired Athra to want to sit down and really dig into this lane?
Okay. I was promoting a book.
Okay.
The summer of 2018. And I was in a green room at a television station promoting that book.
Okay.
Also in the green room was a neonatologist and an executive director of a nonprofit. So, of course, you're in the green room and you're talking to each other, getting to know each other. The executive director was working for a nonprofit, and in that nonprofit, they gave housing and medical attention to men with HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
And so the executive director said to me, you need to find a way to write about this issue that is impacting your community. And do you realize that African American women, they contract HIV at a much higher rate than other women? And it's because your churches don't want to openly talk about homosexuality. So men are covering this up. They're getting involved with women. You need to talk about this.
Interesting.
I promised I would. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. but it was still in the back of my mind. And in 2019, about 15 months later, my son was getting his driver's permit.
Okay.
And so he needed to get a real ID. I couldn't find his birth certificate, so I went to the vital records office to get a copy of his birth certificate and ran into a friend of mine that I would see periodically. And we had been really close back in the early 90s. And, because we were married and with children, life kind of got in the way. Okay. But she was dealing with some things. And by this time, I had answered my call into the ministry, and she had seen some of my Facebook messages, and she wanted to talk. And, I always saw her as a little sister because she was like 6 years younger than I am. So I always saw her like a little sister. And as we talked, she revealed to me what she was dealing with. And that, working with her through this and already having a group of ladies that were, the pandemic came and we're dealing with things, and so it was a slow process for my friend to reveal what was going on. But the pandemic happened, and we're coming together to try and make life happen. Life was difficult, being at home with your spouse and all of that. So they allowed me to let her come into the group, and we were able to help her. And I told her about the promise I had made and asked if I could use the basis to write a fictional story, but it's based on actual events. But it's not just her story. I have found it's a lot of people's stories.
Wow.
There's a book where a young lady even wrote that her grandfather was a guy who was bisexual, and how her grandmom had to deal with that. So it's a tale as old as time.
True. It's so, like I say, it is a tale as old as time, and we can all look within our own families that we probably have that. Lantoinette, good evening, thank you for joining us. It really is something that that is a subset of a lot of our lives. And taking that story, as we've researched and really dug in, and as you and I talk, this something is one that's almost I don't want to call it the underbelly, but sits within our church a lot of times. And you know your process, as I've come to learn it, your approach really involves like monthly letter responses, and group discussions. And if I could ask, what maybe has been the most transformative moment you've witnessed or experienced, in the 8515 support group, or just in your travels and your journeys, having these conversations, through your show or with others?
Well, I'm going to be honest, and this is a beautiful thing. Okay. The beauty of it is this: marriages are being healed.
Yeah.
And I know people might say, oh, I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that, but hear me out. 85% of what you want, your husband is responsible. Your husband is loving. Your husband is taking care of you and the children. It's everything that you want, except there's this one thing. And Damon, in some marriages, the wife's sex life is not suffering. Some marriages, there is the suffering.
Right.
And you know what else I found out?
Mm-hmm.
That men deal with this issue too.
Mm.
They're not as quick to react as a woman is.
Yeah.
And I even was working with a lady who's dealing with the fact that her father has transitioned.
Wow.
And her mother transitioned, but she read her mother's diary.
Mm-hmm.
And she had this animosity towards her dad because her dad was known to be promiscuous. And he had other children, and she was an only child.
Mm-hmm.
And her dad is promiscuous. But when she found her mom's diary, her mom was always in love with another woman and had a relationship with another woman.
Wow.
And so she's dealing with this because, like, you know, I've spent all this time having these feelings towards my dad, but now she can see that this is his way. That was his way of surviving.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about that. Like, we don't have these conversations. And so that made me look at men in a whole different light. Like,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes maybe the man is doing these things, but he's trying to keep his family together because he was a wonderful dad to her. She didn't have to, mom didn't have to want for anything, but when he was confronted with this, she's assuming that that was his way of dealing with it. And eventually they lived in 2 separate bedrooms. They always stayed together. They were cordial, but eventually, you know, they shared 2 separate bedrooms. And, you know, she's, you know, half siblings, and that has kind of helped her be more accepting of her half siblings. But just, I mean, it's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to learn to appreciate.
Yeah, it's like that double-edged sword, or walking that fine line. And just listening to it, because I mean, as a man, I know, just speaking from my own preference, yeah, a lot of times we can be slow to show emotion,
Mm-hmm.
um, show our intention or our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that pride and that ego that sets within a lot of us. But just listening, like you said, we don't have these conversations. That's why I'm happy and I'm honored to have you on to at least broach this and open this up, you know, to more eyes and more ears, because this may be something that's going on, you know, to someone who's watching or listening to this. But what tools or resources or what kind of conversations should we start having? Because to me, this is one of those things where, you know, a lot of us who grew up in single parent homes who didn't have fathers, or some of us who grew up, we didn't talk about, you know, financial structure and preparing for the future. Like, this is also to me one of those conversations that, you know, we should be broaching. But how, I guess, really is the question. Like, how should we broach these conversations with our families, you know, and with our kids, especially if we are in that space, if we feel that we're in that space? Like, how do we broach that and have that?
You know, that's a good question. And and I'm saying that's a good question because I don't think there's a one size fit all. I remember having a conversation with my dad, and my dad was telling me how he had a cousin who was dealing with that in with his parents. And my dad said, you know, that his cousin cried a few times. And because he was dealing with, how do I still see my dad as a man? And my dad said, I just had to be honest with him. And I said, what do you remember the most about your dad? Because they were in their like early 30s when they were having this conversation. And my dad said that he told him, well, I remember him taking good care of us. I remember him, being there for us. He helped my mom. He cooked, he cleaned. We never wanted for anything. But I'm having a problem dealing with this. And my dad said, I told him that man that you described is still that man.
Yeah.
You're just looking at a piece of that.
Yeah.
And, my dad was, both of my parents, I really wish they were able to stay together, because I would have loved to see them be together. But, my dad had a good way of never judging people and trying, both parents did. Let's look at the good in them.
Yeah.
And, my dad even talked about, how, that uncle was there to help them grow up. He used to let them use his car, to do what teenagers did.
Right.
Because he had 2 cars. My grandparents only had 1. So it's those things that my dad said that you have to hold on to. How did they approach that? I'm not sure. One of the ladies in the group said that it took her husband over a decade to admit to who he is, because he's
truly,
still but she said she would ask and he would deny. And he started drinking a little bit too much, and then one day he just let it out. And she was a little upset with him, because she said, I always asked, but he never told.
Yeah.
And she said that one of the things that helped is that, she, I guess, like over that decade, she worked through emotions, but she said that she didn't want to return to where she had come from, which was a lot of substance abuse, violence, chaos, and disorder. So her husband brought her that stability, but it was just this one piece. And she said it was after their second child that something in her gut started telling her that something's not right.
Wow.
And she pushed it out for a while, and then, things started changing in the bedroom, and there was some changes in him, some changes in friends that started piquing her interest. And
start raising red flags and questions.
There you go. Yes.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing. And like you say, I think some of the things you mentioned, don't really know how to address it, but it needs to be addressed and should be talked about. And I love the fact, even like, in the comments, Antoinette say, these conversations, they will bring, I think, a better understanding and a greater understanding. One, for us to extend grace, and like you said, Father not judging anyone. I think we need to put our judgments to the side and try to extend some grace, and at least give an opportunity or a will, if you will, to understand, because it may be different for you, but that dynamic, now you're not judging, but you have a better understanding, and now you understand what this couple may be going through. But maybe you can apply some of this to maybe even in your own relationship, because like you said, the SCX part, is probably the biggest scope of the problem, but I'm pretty sure there are other underlying things that fall under that you still need to be discussed under that umbrella. I think that that's the huge part. And I think, yep, amen. Because we don't do that enough. I really think we don't talk anymore. We live in such a world now where we're disconnected. We're always on our phones. We're
Mhm.
always, bombarded with social media, and the time around the table just doesn't exist
Mhm.
anymore. And I think that's where this approach would be great. Just having family time, even if it's for 30
Mhm.
minutes, just to kind of dive in to just your daily life and to get a better understanding of what your spouse, even your kids, other family
Mhm.
members are going through. And
Mhm.
some of the other things that really piqued my interest, Aethra, was reading some of your work and looking into your work. You mentioned uh the chakra system, colors and things for letters for submission. Now,
Mhm.
this again, something that struck me is like this approach. Like, how did this unique approach like emerge for you? And when you're working with people, um,
Mhm.
how do like maybe your participants express their emotional state when going through this process?
Mhm. Well, I'm going to be honest. So I I met I worked with a lady who is Hindu,
Okay.
and by her sharing her religion with me,
Mm-hmm.
she was the one who introduced me into meditation in my adult life.
Okay. Okay.
And so it was a journey, having challenges in my first marriage. And I'm praying to God, God, show me. And believe it or not, I would, you know, show me, God would lead me to go to the bookstore. And every single question, every time what was weighing my heart down, there was an answer for it.
Mm.
So one time it was, I'm dealing with this spirituality stuff in my marriage because I'm like, God, you said this man is going to be my husband back when, and I'm going through these marital challenges. And oh my goodness, go into a store and I see this book cover, purple book cover, person sitting down, legs crossed, and this going up, and it something said, read this.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. So now I'm meditating. Now I start understanding certain things that I didn't understand before. So, like your crown chakra, that's at the top of your head here, where people receive their spiritual messages. I always knew a lot of things as a child, but didn't understand why.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But then I also learned when I went to see a psychic. I know, Damon, I tried everything to stay married the
Yeah,
first time. I'm
cause
telling you.
listen, in my head, I'm like, we just going through the gambit, and we just hitting everything and trying everything,
I
in the
tried.
journey.
And so she said to me, you keep your portals too open. I didn't understand that. And that's the chakra system. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to keep them in balance. So you have to meditate. And when you get to that point, it really does heighten your spirituality,
Okay.
your connection with God. And believe it or not, a lot of people today are in the chakra system.
Hmm.
It's becoming more common. So, like I like to wear my bracelet because, you've got your chakras and they have meaning, but red is that foundational piece.
Okay.
Red is the foundation of everything. And when you think about it, it makes sense. That's down like at your pelvic bone where you sit, that's that base, that foundation. And if the foundation is broken,
Mm.
then nothing else is going to work. And that means the foundation in yourself. You've got to be strong. You've got to be rooted. Foundation of your relationships. And a
Mm.
lot of times, this is why it had to come into the book, because we have two main characters, really, Adriana and Cilicia. Well,
Okay.
Cilicia's foundation is broken. Her husband is physically abusive and he's dealing with substances. Whereas on the other end, Adriana's husband, he's not dealing with that. Her marriage is solid.
Got it.
She's not dealing with those challenges. And I wanted to bring that chakra system in there as a means of saying, hey, let's look at how we are feeling and why we're feeling that way. So in the 8515 support group, when we meet face to face, we really do sit in egg-shaped chairs with cushions that correlate with the chakra system. And that's how we kind of can gauge how we're feeling.
Wow. So in that system, so you basically, when you come in, you're sitting or you select a chair based on your mood or what you're feeling, that day of the meeting.
Yes. And
Wow.
if your cushion color is taken, then you take your cushion cover out of the chair you're going to sit in and put the color that matches how you're feeling.
Yeah. Hey, Antoinette, I'm with you. I'm on this journey with you too, sis, because I'm like, wow. I mean, it's very interesting. And that's why I say, this was definitely a conversation that I wanted to have, because I think, whether you're watching it with us live, and I think, I see some people in the weeds and Antoinette for dropping comments, but, go back and play this back, because I think they're tools and things that, we can all learn something. I think if you take the time to use your two ears that you're given, the reason why it's twice as hard to listen as it is to speak. That's why you only got one mouth, but you got to take it in and really listen. And I thank you, Athra, for doing this, with us this evening. And I just want to go even a little bit further, like to your podcast side again, where, a lot of your experiences, it really covers a wide, age group. I think I read, it seems like it starts, from the 20s to the early 60s. And this to me is because it's such a wide, swath of generations, if you will. Like, how do you ensure that you're meeting these diverse perspectives, and addressing their relationship challenges? Because a 20-year-old, I'm sure, may have a different relationship perspective or dealings than, say, a 50-year-old. So how do you make sure you address all of this in these settings?
Well, we do our best, and they know they have a way of working itself out. So,
Okay.
like, for example, in the book, we have Katerina. And Katerina, it's not her real name, but she's a real person that was allowed to come into the group because she was really falling apart.
Okay.
And so she made it in the group. She was a year into her marriage when she found out that, well, when she discovered that her husband's bisexual, and she said, it's against my religion. I cut it. That's it. No discussions. But I will say that over the past 3 years, although she and her husband did not reunite, the ladies in the group who are older, who remained in their marriages, they have opened her eyes to certain things that are about life. Because when you're young,
Yeah.
you don't know.
You don't
But
know nothing.
but at the same time, she's helped them to see that, it's okay to walk away. Like, it's just it's hard to describe, but easy to see what happens.
Right.
And let me just say this too. In the book and in real life, we do have in the group a couple of young ladies who are in a relationship. They're both married, but they're in a relationship with each other.
Okay.
And it's interesting. I know you're looking, but
yeah, I'm waiting for it. Yeah.
When you're married and your husband's bisexual and you're bisexual and everybody is happy and you are committed to, there's a lot of dynamics, but
Yeah.
we learn, we work through, and even going through the healing process, because like, in this particular relationship, and they have given me permission to talk about things because I told them I was coming live, and they gave me permission because we all want to help people heal.
Yes.
But when one's husband moved away because he gotten a job promotion, and he said to her, hey, I want to start a family. And that was, not exactly what they agreed on, but, they didn't disagree on it. But I mean, it was not something, if it happened, it happened.
It wasn't a priority per se.
There you go. And
Mm-hmm.
then when he got a promotion and he said, hey, I need you to spend a little bit more time here.
Mm.
And dealing with all of that. I mean, like dealing with that. And it's a beautiful thing, because I'm going to be honest, it helps all of us.
That's right.
In our relationships.
That's right.
I mean, it really helps, because a lot of times I will come home and I'm asking, even, we even talk about our children.
Okay.
We talk about our parents. Like, we talk about whatever we need to talk about to help us stay strong and have strong families. And sometimes I start looking at myself and say, hey, I hope I'm a good mom for Angelica and AJ. Those are,
right.
I hope I'm a good stepmom to Kim and Devin,
right.
like I hope, and
it becomes a reflective thing where you're kind of reflecting on, your value or your worth of what you're bringing, to those in your life.
Right. Even with my husband, I hope I'm being supportive.
Right.
I hope these things, and it's a beautiful thing. I think it makes us stronger and better, because here's the thing, and I'm just going to say it. A lot of times we're painted a picture, like Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm aging myself, but Leave It to Beaver.
That whole perfect life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, they never show us the imperfection, right?
Right.
They never show us the things that they're really dealing with.
Mm.
And so here in this group, we do get to see that life happens. Like, there's so much diversity. Nobody's marriage, even if they're dealing with some of the same issues, the marriage is still different.
Yeah, so true.
And it's, and it's beautiful. And I do want to say this, and this is a big message that I hope people get, that we do not need to destroy our families over, I think it was described best in a letter, one of the letters, where a lady had divorced her husband, and the custody arrangement, she stayed with her kids a week, her husband stayed with them a week, but the kids stayed in the marital residence.
Oh, so they swap. Basically, they one in, one out, but the kids were wow.
And so he had an apartment. She's a flight attendant, so sometimes she stayed with a friend. And this particular friend she stayed with is engaged. Well, they're married now.
Okay.
But at that time, her friend was engaged and living with her friend in the spare bedroom that she rented, and observing her friend and her friend's fiance. He's bisexual.
Yeesh.
And her friend accepts it, right? So
wow.
I guess during the course of life, they have a conversation, and he says to her, your husband that you divorced, dude is a pretty good guy. And, you left him for that thing, but you might get that or worse.
Whoa.
And so
Ooh,
the letter was
that's
about
a whole nother side. Whoa.
how can I get my relationship back? Because you think about it, you know, now, you know, that was one of those things, you know, we talked about it in the group, but then I always talk to my consultants.
Yeah.
my consultants, my consultants are homosexual, bisexual,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they married, single,
Right. Kind of give you that perspective about these
about life.
things. Right.
And, and
Right.
and you know, they were saying that, yeah, that guy, you know, he told her the truth. And you know, they even say that a lot of times women, we take things personally when it's not about us. It's really not about us, that they're going through things that they can't talk about. And it is not just sex, it's a lot of things
It's a lot of things.
that
Mm.
that they're dealing with, and they can't always talk about.
Yeah.
And they don't, it's not that they don't love their wives, but they don't want to worry us. So now it helps me understand that if he's being your protector,
Yeah.
if he's providing,
Riding. Yeah. Now,
I'm just saying.
and I'm with you know I love Antoinette, right, the grass is not really greener, and that really sits in and sinks in. And yes, communication is always the key, and I want to say this kindly and lovingly, because women are, they're nurturers, they're providers, and sometimes though just feel like they can fix things, right?
Mhm.
And listening to that story, like, because some people, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate, because I don't know why I hear in the back of my head, to go back is settling, right? But he's doing all of these great things for you, right? He's taking care of you, he's providing for you, he's a good father, and all those things. But some may say, well, to go back to that, because now, or you've accepted now, because you probably, I don't want to say you probably always know, but you probably had an inkling
Mhm.
that he was living this type of life.
Mhm.
So, how would you address that if someone says, oh, well, I wouldn't go back because there's that side. Well, I'm not going back to that. I'm not dealing with that, no matter how good he is. And if you do go back, you settling. Like, how do you address that conversation? Because they say it's not, the grass is not always greener. There's sometimes it's not a right choice, but I think sometimes you have to make the best choice for you, right? And in any situation. So I'm just curious, what your take might be on maybe answering or addressing that point of view.
Okay, so I have friends that, and family members, I do not want their relationship. It would not work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was married the first time, I knew my sisters could not deal with him. I already know.
Okay.
What I'm going to say is everybody has to choose what's right for them.
That part.
So here's a true story, Damon. Very close friend, we're still close friends, but when growing up, she married, I wasn't married, and I didn't like how she was being treated in her marriage, but it was not my business. Life went on. Her husband didn't necessarily like me. Saw him out with another woman on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
And the next morning, she calls me and, wakes me up and say, hey, my husband has left me. And he said to me, he knows that you called. Well, why would he say that to you? Well, I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, after about 3 mornings of this, I finally told her, he said that to you because I saw him out at
Mm-hmm.
restaurant
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not the kind of person that's going to call and say, hey, your saw you dude.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
not going to do that.
Right.
My mom told us, you never do that. you know, my dad, they married when they were young, right out of high
Right.
school in the
Right.
1960s. I mean, he was a handsome guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He was a bricklayer. He made a lot of money. I mean, he made a lot of mistakes. And, like he
Yeah.
told me one day, he said, women been chasing me ever since I went to school. He said, when I was in the first grade,
Mm.
the first day on the playground, couple of girls chased me and was kissing me all over my face. He said I was just so weak. Now, that gave me a perspective. And so, my mom said that, you know, most people didn't come and tell her. And
Right.
so my grandmom even said, yeah, I saw your dad a couple times, but I wasn't going to call and tell your mom. I'm not going to do that to my daughter. So, my friend, I hated to tell her. After a while, they got back together. And so we went some years without talking to each other.
Mm.
I went through my first pregnancy. When I was in the hospital with my second pregnancy, she called. She said, look, you have been here for me all through, me having my 3 kids, da, da, da. I feel so bad. I'm not here
Mm.
for you.
Wow.
I said, listen to
Look
me.
at that.
I would never come between you and your husband.
That's right.
I would never. And I know how he feels about me. Focus on your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so we go another 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And by this time now, the marriage is really over.
Wow.
But it's not because of anything I said.
Right. It's just
And
natural.
and I
Natural.
say that because what's right for one person is not right for another.
That's true. That's true.
And we have to respect.
Mm-hmm. That's
You
true.
know,
You're 100% right. No matter what you may see or whatever receipts you may have, that's their relationship. And I agree with you. I've come to learn and understand uh how I deal and how I've had to sit and live in my relationship. It's
mm-hmm,
totally different than everyone else. Have there been things said or seen by me or by other people? It was a time in life where, like I said, I can relate. It
mm-hmm,
I wasn't making the best choices.
mm-hmm,
So but how I had to go through it, I know it's totally different than a lot, but I going through it, we've been together, 30 years and we've been married for 25. And in that, and in that, you have your ups and downs. But like I said, I've seen other things from other people, but like I'm the same way. Not for me to say.
mm-hmm,
And if you come and ask me, please believe I'm going to tell you the best thing for you to do is figure out how to fix your marriage. You
mm-hmm,
know, whatever it is that you may have to go through, whatever crow you feel you may have to eat, if that's the person that you chose to be with,
mm-hmm,
commit to it, you
mm-hmm,
know. And if it doesn't work, at least when you look yourself in the mirror, and that was always my thing. If I had to walk away or we ever had to walk away, I know that I gave 200%, you know, to that person into this relationship. And I think
mm-hmm,
that's the mindset. But I agree with you totally that every relationship is different and you have to make the choices that's best for you, not what
mm-hmm,
Damon or Athra or anybody else decides to do or has to say. You need to
mm-hmm,
keep all of that noise on the outside of the bubble, and we don't want that to come in. um
mm-hmm.
you also, Athra, you have uh man, just lost my train of thought, but you have programs like a 12-step program in healings, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about this, the challenges of
Mm-hmm,
sometimes being stuck
mm-hmm,
and this relationship dynamic. Like, what are, if you could just kind of like 1 or 2 steps that you kind of go through with, whether it be a couple, individuals, to kind of help them kind of begin that path of
Mhm.
really getting through that stuck period. Because we all, I think at some point we all get stuck. We all
Mhm.
want to throw our hands up and just be like, I quit. Can you share one or two steps that maybe you work with people to kind of get through that process?
Well, I'm going to say this first of all. Let's just go back to that foundation.
Mm.
We have got to keep God first place in
Oh,
our lives.
okay. Amen.
And, and I'm not saying that, I'm not telling you, you've got to have that higher power.
Mm.
That 12-step program says that,
Yeah.
the God of your understanding. You've got to have that higher power in your life. When you have that higher power in your life, God is going to reveal everything that you need to know. Just like, so keep God first, have open communication as much as you can. And
Mm-hmm.
then here's the second thing that I'm going to be honest about. When the yoke breaks, okay, because there'll be a lot of cracks.
Yeah.
If you can get that gold or some wood glue and fix it, that's beautiful. But you have to talk about it. You have to be honest. You have to be willing to admit your wrongs.
Mm.
And
That
they
part.
have to be able to admit their wrongs. So
That
I'm
part.
gonna give you an example. I have to uh, 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 apologize to my husband. I have to do it. So he's a really good guy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday, I had worked really, really hard. And, he had worked and, he come in and I had a CWP class yesterday.
Okay.
And he was wanting to show me all of these, honey, let's decide which one of these guns you want to take and let's fit. And I was like, I'm exhausted. And I was mean to him.
You was
Okay.
mean. Yeah.
I was mean.
Mm.
Now, oh my goodness. Yesterday was a busy day. I really didn't get a chance to talk to him and apologize. But I am doing it when I get off of here tonight because he's home and Damon, I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I
Sometimes just addressing it. Just go back and address it and clear the air and apologize. Sometimes that's all it takes. Because
you
you don't
know
know what you might not even know what his mindset might be from that.
well, I tell you what he told me though. What he
Okay.
told me today, he said, you know what? I'm glad you went ahead and got that CWP. He said, because now I don't have to worry about you
Worry.
so much.
Mm.
Let's think about this thing
Mm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm feeling like I'm frustrated, aggravated, I'm tired, and all he's trying to do is what? Protect his
Care
family.
and protect for you. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm. Look at that.
So now I have to go back. I have to apologize. I think I'm gonna have to buy some candy. Like I have to go either get a biscuit good bar or some almond joys or a Snicker or a finger.
Mm.
I'm gonna have to sweeten it up, but we have to admit when we're wrong, and
Yeah.
we really do have to be willing to make amends, even if that means that I might have to iron a shirt or.
Yeah. Hey, look. But I mean, that's minor though, and clearing the air and just having that communication, like what we've been talking about all night, and just understanding where you went wrong. Because sometimes that's all it takes. And it's funny you mentioned. Sometimes you have that flashback moment where you say to yourself, "Oh man, how did I sound or come across?" Because I mean, my wife says it to me sometimes. I'm busy, I'm focused, working on something. And she might ask me something, and
Mm-hmm,
just the tone in my delivery, like I may not see it right away, but
mm-hmm,
just the way that she pauses, and now I may notice after how she's responding to me, and I got to pause for me, like, whoa, now, hey, babe, when you asked me that, or hey, I apologize, I was busy focused in on XYZ. I didn't mean that, and you take that for granted though.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes, this is your spouse. They're not a whipping board,
mm-hmm,
but you take it for granted that they're always going to be there. And oh, you should just know. that this is what I'm doing. No, they're a person too. They're going through their own things, their own experience, and how you respond or your tone could be, I don't want to say detrimental, but it changes the whole dynamic of what your day could look like,
Mm-hmm.
what your week could look like, and it's really great that you bring that up. We need to take accountability for our actions when we're dealing with our spouse and others.
Mm-hmm. And Damon, when you have God in your life, you'll
Speak on
start recognizing that sooner
it.
than later.
That's so true.
You
So
know,
true.
and
So true.
those are the two things that I will say.
Mm,
Don't let the yoke get very deep cracks, and don't
love
let
that.
them get wide. Go
I
ahead
love
on
that.
and start working on it.
I love that. Well, look, Athra, this has been, I mean, it's been an amazing conversation. And I know we've scratched the surface really on a lot of different areas that you really work in and you work on. And I really tried to, get as much information in, to our audience, whoever's, like I said, watching this right now or watching it on the playback, or you decide to listen to this on your favorite, audio streaming platform. But you don't want to do that. You want to watch this here on the Mogul TV, Infusion TV with
Mhm.
myself and Athra. But before we close out, Athra, I have to ask this. Is there
Mhm.
anything that I did not ask you that you'd like to share before we close out, with our audience?
Yes, and that's this. Okay. So in the book, one of our characters attempts suicide. And I want us to remember that mental health is a very serious issue, that help is available. We just
Yes.
have to reach out and
Yes.
touch someone. And in the 1970s, Tashaki Shane wrote, "For colored girls who consider suicide, when the rainbow is enough, life has so many options.
Mm,
And we have to be open to possibilities. So if one thing isn't right for us, there are 50 other things out there for us to explore to see which one lines up with who we are."
mm. Whew. Listen, I couldn't have said or asked for anything better. Yes, Lantoinette, this is good information. This is the best way to put a pen in it. Ladies and gentlemen, the incredible, the amazing Athra Bodhi, author, inspirational speaker, podcast host as well. And Nathan, before we go, I want to allow you to take a second. Where can our followers and audience go out and buy your books or find you speaking or any of your social media tags that you'd like to share? Please go ahead and take a minute to do that.
Oh, please follow me on Facebook, Athra Bodhi, author. You'll find me on YouTube, Athra Bodhi. You can find me on Spotify, Apple TV, wherever you get your podcasts. And at the end of the month, the last Saturday in the month, I will be in Pensacola, Florida. Books by the Bay. You can find me at the author signing tent, table 1A, between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And just follow my page and see what else I have coming up.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Athra, thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here this
David.
evening. Oh, look, it's
Thank
my
you.
honor, my pleasure. Uh, Great information, great stuff. Continued success to you and
Thank
all
you.
your facets of the work that you're bringing and giving to us. It's truly needed. And again, I just really appreciate you taking the time out. So, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Damon Cunningham, aka Dame DNYDC. You can catch me again in 2 weeks as we come back live. I'm going to be sitting down with Leon Heron, certified life and health coach, founder of Resilience with Leanne, and Happiness on Tap podcast host. She's going to be joining me on our next live. So come on back and enjoy that. And look, continue to follow Two Mics Up across social media. We're, Two Mics Up, IG, Facebook, YouTube, www.twomicsup.com. We are a 4-time award winning show. And I thank you all for your continued support. And we like to sit down and have real talk with some of the dopest guests like Athra. And we just keep bringing the heat I thank you all for your support. And remember, two mics up, part of the Mogul TV Global Network. We are now with our own channel, my own channel, Infusion TV. We have 5 great shows that we started or at the end of 2024. 4 of those shows have been award-winning shows as of 2025. And we're coming back with those 5 plus 5 more. And if you're interested in airing your show on the Infusion TV channel, just reach out to me. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you. We're taking all positive content on the #1 network for positive TV, the Mogul TV Global Network. And like we do at the end of each and every show, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with 3 things. And Athra, don't go. I want to talk to you before we go.
Okay.
So just hang tight. I'm going to leave you with these 3 things, ladies and gentlemen. May you all stay safe, stay blessed. Mike's out.
007.